DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Wedding Chat with Dave Ternier and Jeremy Brech.
We're back.
Hey, Dave.
What?
We are back. Were we gone? We were gone last week. It was so in the US, we have this tradition of being thankful for eating a lot of food. It doesn't really make sense, but
How was your Thanksgiving, Jer?
what?
How was your Thanksgiving?
You know, my Thanksgiving was good. We didn't really have to travel too far. I know a lot of people have to travel, but it wasn't bad for us. Pretty low key. Did some Black Friday shopping.
Nice.
And yeah, I picked up two 65-inch TVs for the biz and just a couple of knickknacks here and there. I got a 10 terabyte hard drive for backups and stuff like that. So that's a whole different show.
10 terabyte?
Yeah, 10 terabyte. Yeah. So just because we're doing a lot more with like graphic work, we're doing a lot more with video work, and it's just it's good to have stuff. Black Friday shopping.
Right. Nice.
And yeah, I picked up two 65-inch TVs for the biz. Are we getting a delay in sound here? What was that?
That was my issue. Don't worry about it. Just keep
Okay.
going.
I'm like, I don't know what just happened there. But anyways, at least I know I sound like an idiot, so that's good. So yeah, how was your Thanksgiving? Do you guys acknowledge it at all? I mean, I have no idea. Obviously not, probably.
Jeremy, stop fitting into the stereotype, buddy. So Thanksgiving for us is always the first Monday of October.
Oh, okay.
Because we do Thanksgiving when, right, the fall harvest is coming in or probably done by that point, so on and so forth. It's lots of fall foods. It's yada, yada, yada.
All right. So ours was based on the pilgrimage. What's your guys' Thanksgiving based on?
Giving thanks.
But is there like hey, we shook hands with the Indians type thing? That's what we did, apparently. And then we took their land.
Why is Canadian Thanksgiving on a different day?
Now, why is it celebrated? I mean, I know you give thanks, but is there like a specific, these people were thankful back in this day because, yeah, it was like the Native Americans had helped the white man, the pilgrims, with, providing this supper and in thanks of their work. And I don't know. Is there anything? Do you guys have any backstory, or is it just like, you know what? Let's just eat a lot today?
So, why do Canadians celebrate? We do so many things. The common wisdom seems to be that because we're so much farther north, our harvest days arrive earlier, so we give thanks a lot sooner. Whatever the truth, there's one fact history can't deny. Canada has been celebrating the holiday a lot longer than our southern neighbors. Oh. Dun, dun, dun.
We haven't been thankful very long. I'm going to be honest.
Thanksgiving in Canada goes back to 1578. Really? Americans didn't begin their tradition until 1621. We got you beat, buddy. 50 years.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff that you're probably beating us in.
Oh, God. Anyway, John's probably going, what are you guys doing?
Like, guys, nobody's watching right now.
Focus.
So why are we here today? Well, we're here to give thanks, but we're here to talk about some of the most awkward moments at a wedding. And that is when it comes time for the microphone. Now, this was my idea.
Yep.
Because I had one of the most awkward situations. And I hope everybody would do the same thing that I did in that moment. I love building the anticipation here.
I would have the
opposite. You would have.
Carry on.
So the topic tonight is going to be based on, what do you do when somebody wants to talk on the microphone, or when someone's supposed to talk on the microphone, but probably shouldn't. Someone's not comfortable on the microphone. Someone's not in the right state of mind for the microphone. And that's actually where this idea came from.
Okay.
It actually came from two concepts of what I just said, kind of all rolled into one. So first of all, how many times do you get couples that say the only people that we want to talk is the best man and the maid or matron of honor? You get that a lot?
No.
No?
No, only because, and that is an unfair question for me, because we never, up here, there's no such thing as the best man maid of honor always speak.
Okay.
Up here, there's often a toast to the bride and often toast to the groom, and many times they're done by those two people, but they could just as easily be done by other bridesmaids, or maybe it's going to be Uncle so-and-so doing toast to the bride. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So here, this just to kind of give you some background on why this topic came up.
Sure.
And there's a lot of situations that I run into where they're like, don't let this person speak or don't let that person speak. But it was, it was the beginning of October. I had a wedding, and the couple, when we went through all their planning, they said, the only people that we want to have the microphone is the best man to do his speech and the maid of honor to do her speech. And I'm like, okay, great, no problem. They had kind of given me a heads up. They're like, whatever happens, we do not want our parents to speak. We don't want them to get up and say some words. And I'm like, okay, is there a certain reasoning? They're like, no, we just don't want them. We just don't want them to speak at the event. I'm like, okay, I get it. No problem. And again, the reason I asked the question is because I actually learned that a couple shows ago when you were like, well, why did you pick this song, or why this specific song? Tell me about it, why it's important. Yeah. So I basically asked that question. Why is there something important that I should know regarding your request?
Right.
So anyways, the night went great. The dance is going awesome. And the father of the groom is completely trashed. And again, he's looking out. He comes over by the DJ booth. He's looking out, and he's seeing all these people having a great time. All these people are having a blast. And he's like, this is my moment. This is where I want to get on the microphone, and I want people to know that, that he's a part of what's going on tonight. Okay. You following me?
Yep. He's got a captive audience. He's like, this is it.
Yeah. They're going to love whatever I say right now. But the thing was, like, he was so inebriated that he could barely talk in the first place. Okay. So it wasn't so much that the bride and groom, it wasn't so much about them saying we don't want anybody else to talk. It was about making that decision on my own, knowing that if he gets on the microphone, he's going to make a fool of himself. And I don't want that for the bride and groom. I don't want that for him. And it wasn't about me, like, oh, you're going to stop my dance floor. I didn't care about that. I mean, he could have stopped my dance floor. They were having such a great time. They would have picked it right back up. I wasn't worried about that. But the thing that made it even harder was, he kept coming over and he's like, and he wasn't like yelling at me like he was mad. He was just kind of like, I want the microphone, I would like to talk on the microphone. And I'm like, they requested to not have any open mics or any open speeches or anything like that. And so now we have like nephews coming over and his brother coming over. So like the uncle of the groom coming over, and they're like, yo, just let him talk on the mic. He just wants to say a few words. And I pulled them off to the side. I said, I apologize. He's not in the state where I think this is going to be a good idea. And it was requested for nobody else to speak at tonight's wedding. And I have to accommodate my bride and groom's wishes. And I didn't use they paid my bill card. It was more about, again, just the request of the bride and groom and just realizing that this moment could really look bad for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So like I said, that was the hard part, was trying to explain to his brother and his nephews and all these people like rooting him on, like, yeah, give him the mic. Kind of explaining that softly, that this is not a good decision right now. So, finally the groom, he saw what was going on, and he comes over and he's like, no, I don't want you to speak. He's like, you are not in this state to speak. He's like, just go out there, have fun. Everybody's having fun out there. Go out there and just have fun. And then, he went out there and then comes back maybe 10 minutes later. Hey, I want to speak. I'm the father of the groom. Let me speak. And then again, the groom came over and he's like, no, just go out there. He's, everyone's having a good time. Don't interrupt what's going on. And then I think he maybe did it one more time and then it was done. But that's really the topic that I want to kind of focus on is, how do you accommodate people who aren't able or shouldn't be speaking on a microphone? And how do you accommodate those people that are just requested not to speak on the microphone from the client? So I again, you and I both love when people chime in and they give, here's a story, or here's a situation that I ran into, or if they have a solution to a situation similar to what we're talking about tonight. So anybody, if you have anything to add, please throw that in there. But Dave, what do you think?
Sounds like a fun night. Awkward for sure, especially it being that person. Some random guest, different story. Dad, though, makes it tough for sure. Yeah. I'm curious what you would have done had the groom not come over.
So I guess, and I was pretty much in that position. Okay. And as a DJ, we can always put our headphones on and everybody around us disappears. But truthfully, right? Yeah. You're in the mix. You can't talk to anybody who's right beside you or right over your shoulder. I'm in the zone. Don't talk to me. That's like our brick wall. Like, my headphones are on. I'm disconnected. Yeah. But basically, I just would have kept saying or explaining to him, it was requested that they only wanted those specific people to speak. And I didn't bring up the fact that he was drunk. I didn't bring that up to him. I just, I didn't say you're drunk. It was, when I was talking to the people who were kind of encouraging him, oh yeah, give him the mic. I just kind of said, he's not in the state, plus the groom, the bride and the groom requested that nobody else spoke on tonight. And everyone's having a great time. I tried to encourage him, just go out there and just have fun with everybody. But yeah, it was probably like an hour left of the evening. So if he would have been up there for the whole hour asking me to speak on the microphone, he would have wasted an entire hour standing behind the DJ booth or by the DJ booth instead of going out and celebrating with people.
So my take on it is, I think you handled it just fine. I always do the soft, look, it's not happening tonight, yada, 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 yada. I'll be a soft barrier between that person and what they want to do. But if it really comes down to it, I'm not the person responsible for that individual the bride and groom are. Particularly when it's dad. I would have gone over and said, hey, come on, Chuck, let's go talk to your boy. Let's go talk about the best way to handle this. Buddy. Let's go have a drink. Let's whatever.
Let's go have a drink.
Yeah, and we're going to see
his son. But I'll take one with you.
Yeah, and we're going to see his son, of course, right? Because you don't want to come off as the John, I'm not sure if I can say these words, but anyway, you don't want to come off as the who, now dad's pissed at you, and maybe the son has too much to drink too, and he's going, hey, the hell did you do to my dad? Because that would suck.
Yeah. But okay, so I 75% agree with you. The thing that I don't like about taking him over to the groom and saying, here, he's your problem now, is because if the groom's having a great time, he doesn't want to worry about those things. Now, if he sees it and he realizes, okay, I should probably go do something, then he kind of took it upon himself to take care of that situation. But for me to basically say, here, you know what, he's a burden to me, now he's yours.
Yeah. Well, look, ultimately, he is the groom's responsibility. I get the sentiment behind what you're saying. That being said, I guess there's one more step that maybe I would take before going to the groom. Depending on the rapport I've developed with the guys in the wedding party, I may go to them first. Hey Chuck, especially if Chuck, the best man, is brother of the groom, which makes this guy his dad, right? Chuck, bud, I need you here. Your dad's having a blast. I'll tell you that right now. He's having a blast. And he needs your help right now. He needs your help to take it to the next level. Would you please
take him to the next level?
But I mean, I'm saying that for the benefit of dad, who's obviously hearing me, right? And then the moment dad turns and looks at his boy, I'm going, you know what I mean? Because best man doesn't want dad ruining the party either, because that embarrasses him, and he knows that'll embarrass his brother, who's the groom, and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So that's. I'll refine my answer. I'll revise my answer, pardon me, and say that that's where I would go before going to the groom, were that situation available. And again, it does depend on the rapport I've developed with the guys in the wedding party. Or if daughter of dad is on the bridesmaid side, perfect. I might go to her, depending on the type of character she is and this type of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I've certainly had situations like that in the past as well. Me of such fantastic memory. Gosh, what are the details in some? I've people who have followed me for some time and maybe read the blog back when I was actively writing it know that I like to manage the speeches in a lot of ways, and that's ahead of time, right? Communicating with the speech makers, that type of thing. So I say that only to preface the fact that some of the most uncomfortable things have had happen on a mic have been with the people who had been scheduled and planned to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Two come to mind. The bridesmaid who started dropping the occasional swear, and then they got more explicit, and then she just didn't give a and the room was dead quiet. Side note, she and a few others were arrested and charged for drug trafficking a year-ish later. True story.
Let's go into that story.
Yeah. And then there was the other situation where it was relative of the bride, doing my best to protect the innocent here. And he started his speech by mocking me on mic because I had gotten a hold of him ahead of time. And, you don't have to tell me how to do my speech. This is my sister's wedding. Leave me the hell goddamn alone. I can talk on this thing as long as I want. There, now that's out of the way, everybody.
Oh my gosh.
And then he went on for 20 minutes. And the poor bride was ready to walk out.
So how many situations have you had where, you're pretty much winding up with toasts? Best man did his thing, maid of honor did her thing. And you're like, thank you everybody for your toast this evening. And then all of a sudden you get a bridesmaid or a groomsman that's like, hey, I'd like to say something. Have you ever had that?
You know what? By the time they wrap up, I don't know if it's maybe somehow the way I communicated or what, but I haven't had that. Now I have had, during dinner, hey, so-and-so wants to say something. And those are always a bit of a judgment call because the occasional time that's been the mint. I would say the majority of the time that probably doesn't happen, but by the time we get to the end, not a whole lot. You?
I get it a couple times. And the reason I ask that is because, when you're when you're kind of walking away from the head table or stepping back away from the head table and you have that person, hey, I want to say something. And then you kind of have that, you kind of glance over the bride and groom like, okay, should I let this happen or not? You know, because you don't want them to be disappointed or upset with you because you allowed that to happen. But yet you don't want to upset that individual, and you don't want to upset the bride and groom if they did want that to happen. So, I mean, some of that comes from pre-communication. And I mean, a lot of the times I'll ask that, you know, if anybody else last second wants to do a toast, are you okay with that? So just communicating with them ahead of time is going to kind of save some of that relief. But again, I mean, then you get those that, you know, they're like, okay, whatever happens, you know, I don't mind if my brother speaks, but I definitely don't want any of my other bridesmaids or groomsmen to speak. So yeah, I mean, sometimes that can get kind of awkward. I just didn't know if you ever ran into that situation.
Yeah. You know, now that I think about it, nobody ever knows when the speeches are ending until I transition to the next thing. And then it's too late because I never introduced the last speech as the last speech. And I didn't realize I didn't do this, but now that you have me think about this, I mean, it's, you know, so-and-so doing this speech, so-and-so doing this speech, and there's no first, second, third in my announcements or introductions. And I don't know about up at your part of the world, down in your part of the world, but here, I mean, 99.9 times out of 100, the final people to speak are the bride and groom.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that's been done, I can't imagine anybody saying, oh, I want to say something. No, we close it off. You got that, right? You're not going to outdo the bride and groom. Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, there's no way to upstage. And the thing, like the way we transition from that is there's no way that someone would say, oh, I'd like to speak right after the bride and groom. It's usually going to be before the bride and groom. And I mean, we do occasionally see that, you know, we see those people who want to get that last second speech in, but yeah. How about,
we have a quick question here, if you don't mind.
A
comment from Michael Goring. Great dialogue and being so open about everything. Much appreciated. Absolutely, Michael. Neil says, I'm curious, when you're starting off the evening, do you set up the speeches in a way so that people know there's only certain individuals chosen or not? So Neil, I'm guessing you're, so I'm going to take this the way I think Neil's describing it, and Jeremy, you can take this another way. When I begin an evening, hi everybody, welcome to the wedding reception, you know, Jeremy and Sarah's wedding reception, yada, yada, yada. I don't talk about the agenda at all. I don't reveal anything that's going to happen that night. I only tell people what's coming next. So if that's the context in which you're asking, Neil, then the answer is no. I don't set up. I don't, you know, tell the audience, hey, we're going to do dinner, and then we're going to have these 4 speeches, and then we're going to go to this. None of that happens with me. People don't know what's going to happen until it happens at the weddings I'm a part of. Jared?
Yeah. That is a great question. So, and I think another way, like you can kind of understand what he was saying there. So like as an MC, I will inform guests that, you know, cake cutting is now done. I'm going to encourage you to go grab a beverage for our toasts and speeches, which are going to be happening here soon. But I don't say who's specifically going to speak, what order they're going to speak. The only time that I think can kind of connect with this question here, the only time that people will, or the bridesmaid and groomsmen will actually know, like there is kind of this set idea of who's going to be doing toasts, is when I go up to the best man, the maid of honor, or whoever is planning on speaking. You know, typically it's once they've been served their meal, everyone else is kind of hustle and bustling around getting their food, or food's coming to their tables. That's when I will go up to them. I'll have my agenda in front of me, or I'll have my schedule in front of me, and I'll just let them know, you know, Michael, you're the best man. Do you have
what? I am?
Yeah. No. And that I'll ask that question. I'm like, so I have you doing the first toast. I'm like, you know, you're doing a toast, right? And sometimes they will do that. They're like, what?
Yeah.
So then I'll kind of walk through. Okay, so I have you going first. When you're done, hand me the microphone back, and then I'll introduce our next person to toast, which is our maid of honor. And then I'll go over to them. I'll talk to them. And usually that's about the time when people are like, oh, well, I would like to say something too. And then I can consult with the bride and groom. But those last second ones that come in, it's like if the best man, or if typically it's the women that do it. Because women like to outdo the other bridesmaids. I had a really awkward one. It was in June, and the maid of honor had a great speech. She's like, "Oh, I've known the bride since 6th grade, so on and so on." And story. And there was some funny parts in there, and there was some really good connection. And then I'm walking away, and this bridesmaid stands up, like all proud, like, I want to speak. It's like, okay. And the bride kind of just like, shook her head. Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, this is the rare occasion that this has happened. Yeah. But so I hand her the microphone, and the first thing she says is, well, I've known the bride my whole life. Instead of this whole 6th grade thing. And you can see the maid of honor was just like, really?
Wow. So question for you.
Kept going on, she didn't say it like specifically, but it kept going story after story after story. Kind of like, I should have been the maid of honor for this wedding is really what it was coming down to. And it really got awkward. So then, I try to lighten the mood when she's done. And, just kind of change and transition. So that way it's not like, well, that was weird. So
had you gotten back to your booth, or had you been sitting at your booth, do you think she would have gotten up?
Well, yeah, I've got to get the microphone.
But ignore that for a second. Had you already been back at your booth, do you think she would have stood up by herself or not?
Yeah, she probably would have.
You think so?
She was a very confident bridesmaid.
Okay. I asked that because I think we've talked about this before, right? I never do that walk because I always have 2 mics. So one mic stays at the head table, one mic stays with me at the booth. So I never move from the booth throughout all the speeches.
Yeah, I mean, she was basically looking to grab the microphone from the best man, because the maid of honor went first in this one.
I wonder, and this is me going deep, I wonder if the very act of you walking there to grab something and then walking back, I wonder if that very act, does it create a tiny window for people to go, hey, you know what? While you're doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I'm not that far away. So like when they say, toast the bride and groom, as soon as they do that, that's my cue to start making my way over to stand in front of them, but not in front of them where it's going to interfere with the picture, because there's usually hugs and things like that going on. So I let that happen, let that breathe a little bit. Once they're done hugging or embracing, then I'll grab the microphone from them and, go and transition to the next thing. So.
Got it.
Yeah. I like I said, she was pretty confident. I think she would have grabbed that microphone no matter what.
Okay, so a couple of comments here on the YouTube feed. Michael, maybe I missed this part, but how do you determine who will go first or last for the toasts? Neil comments, Michael, for myself, it's all planned out ahead of time with the couple to arrange the order. Michael says, yeah, same here, but what determines who will go first? Jer, how do you handle that?
So I will typically ask the bride and groom, who's more comfortable, do you think, going first? Because there's some people who are like, oh, he's outgoing and funny. He'll be a great way to kind of kick things off. But then the bride and groom are going to know their best man and maid of honor better than I would, or better than anybody would. So sometimes people need that icebreaker person to go first. And sometimes they're like, well, we want them to go second because we don't want them to, make that other person extremely nervous, because now they have to show that person up, or they have to, equal that energy. So it's typically a bride and groom decision, and I will ask them, who's going to be more comfortable. And if you add the word comfortable in there, as opposed to who do you want to go first, comfortable really helps them understand that, we really need to make this a confident person or somebody who's not afraid to stand up for the first time and kind of get the thing going.
Got it.
And I also think that the way you introduce that individual is going to build their confidence. If you just say, if you introduce them with no energy or no engagement for people to clap and they just stand up and it's crickets, that's already boosted their level of being nervous like 10 times over. So if you give them confidence and you make them feel amazing and a rock star when they get up to use that microphone, they're going to be a lot more confident in what they're doing, even if they're not a confident public speaker.
Solid. Yep. Solid. Couldn't agree more. So that I agree with all of that. My take is just another way, equally, I think, is valuable. I don't go with the most I don't use that word. I kind of just go right down and say, look, do you think any of these people are going to be funnier than the other? Do you think any of these people are going to be more entertaining than the other? And this has changed actually for me. Up until a couple of years ago, I would always tell my couples, what we're going to do is we're going to sandwich this. We're going to start off strong. We're going to put the two weaker people in the middle. We're going to end off strong. And I said, look, I don't want you to think of the people that we've organized, because oftentimes there's 4 speeches here. So I don't know if that's the same in your case or not.
So who held those speeches then?
So we typically, it's not a who up here. It's just the name of, we always have 4. We have toast to the groom, toast to the bride, and then welcome bride to the family, welcome groom to the family.
Oh, okay.
So who does those could be any number of people. 50% of the time, it's best man maid of honor.
Yep.
And both sets of parents.
Okay.
But the other 50% of the time, it's other people doing those things.
So do you do all 4 of those toasts together at the same time?
Back to back, yeah. Yeah. And it's a riot.
Okay.
Which is why I get so involved in making sure ahead of time those speeches are going to be gold. Right? Because if they're not, we're 30, 45 minutes of
yeah.
But yeah, I used to sandwich them like that, but now I no longer do that. I actually I tell people, look, we're going to start off with the weakest person. If you think one of these people is not going to be better than the others, we're going to start off with them, because they will hate going after the person that just killed it.
Yep.
And it'll do nothing but be awful for them. So, I want to know who might the strongest speaker be and who might the least strongest. I hate saying weaker because I don't want them to think of their people as weak, but I help them understand the concept, and then they go, okay, well, you know what? My maid of honor, she's freaking hilarious, and she's going to bring down the house probably. Perfect. We're ending with her. We got that figured out.
Yep.
And then we kind of build out the other 3 on top of that. Now, I do try to keep toast to the bride, toast to the groom back to back from one another. I don't care the order. And I do try to keep the 2 welcomes back to back. Don't care the order. So that's typically speaking how we'll do that. Now, that being said, Neil just made a comment here. Down here in Ontario, our speeches have been broken up throughout dinner instead of back to back. In the case where it's a plated meal, between courses is very common. Yes. In the case of a buffet meal, they'll be done after dinner.
Sure.
Yeah. And depending on the kissing activity, I will use the kissing activity between speeches to help create a really fun 20 to 30 minutes of the night.
Lighten it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I use that also to stretch time or speed things up if need be. Because I always plan my agenda a little loosely. So if I need to fill time, I'll use kissing activity if it's being engaged with well by everybody. Maybe I'll do 2 of those between 2 speeches to, you know what I mean? That type of thing. So
tell me about your kissing activities.
Oh God, we should do a whole show on that actually.
We should. Okay. Let's table that, because
yes,
I'm curious on what you guys all do for kissing activities. We don't have kissing activities. The only thing we have is if they, chime their glasses, then they kiss. But there's not an actual activity. So I'm curious. I would say let's put that on the next show. I'm curious to hear about this.
Yeah, to kiss or not to kiss.
There you go, John. We got our next one.
Beautiful. That'd be a fun show. Because I do enjoy helping my couples come up with some creatively unique idea that we can use for that. Or maybe we're going to do something that, they've heard me speak about that is just a lot of fun. Buffet invitation is also a pile of fun if done well. And I know some people may be rolling their eyes, but if it's a buffet, you can completely win the entire night with a great way to have those tables go to the buffet.
Mm-hmm.
If done well, of course.
Yeah.
Not yada, 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 yada.
So let's go back to kind of the order of when things happen and things and for toast. So the question I always ask, and I actually had a finalization meeting here tonight, and I asked the question, who's all going to be doing speeches, and best man, maid of honor. Okay, great. And then I always ask, like, hey, are you sure? I don't say it like that, but I'll ask now, Alexis, is your dad planning on speaking at all? Oh yeah, he'd like to speak as well. And see, because they kind of overlook that, like that's a speech or that's a toast. They always overlook that because usually when they go to a wedding, then it's time for toast and speeches, and the best man and maid of honor are already speaking, or they're the ones speaking. Where it's like when the father of the bride gets up there, he's kind of doing a welcome. He's not really doing a toast. He's not doing a kind of like you said, welcome to the family type thing. So one of the things that we like to do, and you talked about like 40 minutes of toast. Oh my gosh, people would go insane in Sioux Falls if it was 40 minutes of straight toast. I don't think people could keep engaged that long.
That's too long. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
8 to 9
so
hours.
What I always encourage them to do is, again, ask that question. Okay, is your dad planning on speaking? Yeah, he is. Great. So why don't we have him as soon as, or right before the blessing of the meal, let's have your father come up and do a toast at that point. Because basically he's going to welcome everybody. He's going to thank everybody for coming. It's not so much of a toast to you guys. It's more of a toast to everybody. And it's a different welcome than what I personally do. So I think that would be a great place to put it in there. Plus it kind of breaks up the evening a little bit. And I did like how, who talked about having them happen throughout different parts of the night?
Neil.
Depending on, like you said, depending on what the flow of the meal is, depending on how the room is, we like to kind of drop some of those things in here and there as well. But I don't think I've ever had a moment or I don't think I've ever had an event or a wedding where I didn't have the best man and maid of honor together. I think I've always had them together, but I like to sprinkle in, maybe some of those father of the bride or father of the groom or parents toasts. I like to sprinkle those in throughout and not group them all together. So there's 4 or 5 toasts all in a row at the end. So I like that idea. And I've always been comfortable breaking it up a little bit just so it's not so toast and speeches all in one spot.
I'm going to say something really odd. I've often thought this, but I've never brought it up in real conversation before. So, rather than doing it privately with anybody, I'm just going to bring it up here live. I would never, and I get this is like norm all over the US, but I would never ever, the very idea that the father of the bride might want to speak sounds so old-fashioned and zero equality in that equation. Like, I don't think I've ever had a wedding where the father of the bride has spoken. It's always the parents.
Yeah.
Does the mother never come up and say anything?
So that's great question. So typically the mother will not speak. But I always encourage the mother to go up there and join them. Now, if it's a divorced family, then it's a little bit more,
that's different. Divorced families, that's different entirely.
But yeah, typically, if they say, oh yeah, my dad's going to do a speech, typically the mother does not speak.
That's awful.
Yeah. And truthfully, there's a lot of times where like the mother doesn't even realize that she should be up there as well. Like she should be a part of that moment. And that's why, again, when I go through finalizations, I always say, I would encourage your mother to go up there and join him, or I'll even talk to her and say, now, did you want to join him? when he goes up for his toast or when he goes up for his welcome. And a lot of the times they'll be like, no, he's fine. He doesn't need me.
Right.
But
I mean,
when you think about it,
it's probably got to do with the difference between our societies, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's just, I mean, like you said, unless there's, separated parents and what have you, then that changes things. No doubt about it. I mean, no question. But I would bet that out of the parents I've had come up together, in the cases where just one of them spoke, because sometimes one of them is more outgoing than the other. In the cases where just one of them has spoken, I'll bet you it's 50-50 between the mother or the dad.
Huh.
Yeah. In some cases, the dad's pretty quiet, doesn't want to speak. But the mother, she's a teacher, she's talkative, she's whatever, right?
Yeah.
In other cases, it's the opposite. And I guess there's something, I find something really beautiful. And that's, I suppose, why we refer to it as a welcome to the family, right? Because to have dad go up and welcome groom, I mean, that just sounds so old boys club.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So yeah, I thought, now you see, I mean, us Canadians, we know about this because we see it in the movies, right? The Father of the Bride, So like I said, it's always been in my mind, but I've never actually spoken it out loud. But I think it's a fascinating, just a sign of probably where we've come from, where the world has been at. And I'm curious to see if that changes in the US over the next decade.
Yeah. And I always encourage, like I said, I always encourage them. I think I've had one mother or maybe two mothers that have actually like prepared something to say.
Really?
Yeah.
But
most of the time it's just the father of the bride gets up there, he does his thing, and that's the night. They got their moment.
Very cool. Just a couple of quick comments here. The kissing has to be earned. Lots of different things to be done. Okay, somebody's looking forward to next week's show. I came in late to the show. You may have covered this. Do you announce the toast will be happening in a few minutes so people have time to go to the bar, get a drink if needed? Okay, and there's another great question after that. So do you do anything like that, Jared? Because I certainly do. I mean, I have to, because we're going to have 4 toasts.
Yeah. So I typically will do our cake cutting. And again, I mean, flow is always changing. The agenda is never set like, oh, no matter what, we're cutting cake and then we're doing toast.
Yeah.
Typically, I'll encourage people to go grab their desserts. While you're up, I would encourage you to grab a beverage from the bar. We're going to do our toast and speeches in about 15 minutes. So that way they have a sense of time, but then they also have a sense of, okay, I do need to prepare. I do need to go grab a drink, and then, let people know to find their seats. So I definitely prepare them, because the last thing you want is, again, if you don't have somebody who's a confident public speaker, any type of movement or motion is going to make them feel completely awkward. So if people start getting up and leaving, that's going to really throw a wrench in their party.
Yep.
But I always encourage people to do those things ahead of time, so everyone is completely seated, everyone is ready to go when I hand that microphone to the bride or the best man or the maid of honor.
Yeah, likewise. So David, everybody, there's a few individuals here who've heard some really great words to share with you all about these 2 people, yada, yada, yada. This is the time when, refresh your drinks. If you need to head outside of this room for any particular reason, now's the time. Back here in 5 minutes, everybody, let's go. That type of message. I mean, I'm not saying those exact words, and people always say, gee, should we close the bar during speeches? I'm like, no, you don't need to. Every other wedding that you were at where they closed the bar, they had an MC that sucked, that didn't tell people to go refresh their drinks before the speeches. Don't worry. I'm going to tell them to do that. And you know what? They'll be good for 15 or 20 minutes. Trust me. And never been a problem. Neil actually mentioned here, the bar is almost always closed during dinner. You know what? I used to have weddings like that, and I now tell them, keep it open the whole time. Unless you have some concern about the cost, keep it open the whole time. I will tell people when they go refresh their drinks so that they're not interrupting what's happening when we don't want them going to refresh it. When we don't.
That's interesting that they would close the bar during dinner. I've never.
Okay, so the reason for that is, Neil, I'm assuming here, but back in Saskatchewan, where this was very common, where a lot of weddings happen in small town halls, or they rent a hall either in the big city as well. they have to get their own liquor license for that event. And the liquor license is only good for so many hours. So you see, you're going to laugh at this, Jared, but it's only good for 8 hours.
Oh gosh.
So, and I'm not joking. So if cocktails start at 5, that means that the party has to end at 1. And because so many people want to go later than that, they would close the bar for an hour during dinner, so that way they can go till 2 serving booze.
Interesting.
True story. Because your license is good for 8 hours, but you are allowed to break up those hours, you see.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know if the rules have changed in Saskatchewan, now. I think they've gotten a lot more relaxed everywhere, but that was initially why, at least in my case. Another great question. Can we wrap? Or do you got something?
Let's take one more question. You got one more?
Yep. Oh, yeah, scroll here quick. Sorry. Everybody watching on the Facebook feed, I'm sorry, but the Facebook feed comments continuously disappear on me. So if you're like, why are they ignoring me on the Facebook feed? Facebook, fix that. Let me see all the comments. Let me scroll through all the comments like YouTube lets me. Okay, I'm off of that now. I came in late to okay, here we go. When parents are giving a toaster welcome, or in your case, Jared, father of the bride or what have you, where do you have them stand? At their table, normally in front of the head table, behind head table next to bride and groom? What do you do? I'll go first with this one since you've gone first in the other ones.
Yeah.
I have them come up and stand behind the head table beside the bride and groom. And I very particularly instruct if it's parents of the groom coming up to welcome the bride, I tell them to stand behind the best man because they're speaking from the groom's side. And I tell my bride and groom very specifically to slide your chairs out just a little bit from the head table, angle them just a touch toward the people who are going to be speaking, but only a touch. Do that so you can see their faces, but don't do it so much that you have your backs to the crowd. That way you don't get these awkward pictures like this. So that's why I set it up.
Yeah, and really there's a lot of things that kind of come into play with that. It's all about staging and talking about the room layout with the couple. If they're planning, like if you have a father of the bride who's going to be doing a speech, sometimes it's hard for him to get up behind the stage where, I don't know, it's stupid. Some of the stages that we work with, size wise. Right, so right. I would just encourage what's going to create the best picture or the best photography moment. Making sure that, if the father of the bride is looking at his daughter over here, that the photographer's in the right spot, being able to see this connection, this moment, but yet also allows the father of the bride to engage there. So I'm not big on the bride and groom, going like this. I would rather the bride and groom be like this. Typically, when the dad or when someone besides the best man maid of honor are doing some words on a microphone, they're usually kind of talking to the crowd and the bride and groom. It's rare that, and I kind of help them and stage them to make sure that they're not putting their back to the crowd. The only time that happens is when the bride leans over to the table and the father of the bride leans over the table and they have this embracing, this hug.
Over the table?
There's times where they'll
see. This is why I've set it up always to happen behind the table now, because I've had other situations where bride or parents came up to the podium back when I used to allow a podium, and thank God I don't allow that anymore. Foot down.
What?
We haven't had that conversation before?
We could talk about that one later.
Oh, I have banished the podium from all my weddings.
Use the podium.
That's another topic. Anyway, I've had in the past, I've had parents come up, do their speech from the podium, they're welcome, and then literally, this is it. They're done. Everybody's applauded. They're from the podium to their table. They're maybe a third of the way back now, and then they pause and look over, and you can see in their head they're going, "Crap! I should have walked." They're saying to themselves, "I should have gone over to the bride and groom and hugged them." Yeah. And now they're in this like, "Crap! Do I just carry back to my table, or do I do the awkward, retrace those steps, and then carry on and go hug them, and then come back?"
Yeah.
all of that's been eliminated now because they end their speech standing right beside the bride and groom. And so a hug happens naturally, and the photographer loves me for it.
Are we getting buzzed off by John? What was that? Did you hear that?
John's complaining, says the first 5 were chit chat. The hours.
I wasn't complaining, and no, it wasn't me buzzing. I'm listening. I'm taking notes, and I've got topics.
I seriously think we were getting buzzed off.
I know. I
guess that comes down to final thoughts for the evening. I guess my final thoughts, just make sure that you're communicating ahead of time on, who's going to be touching the microphone, who you don't want to use the microphone, and don't ask, okay, is there anybody you do not want to touch the microphone? Just ask if there's any restrictions or anything specific that we should be aware of when it comes to the microphone.
I'm going to say the contrary to that. Please ask who shouldn't touch the microphone, because that's your party person for the night.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So John, next week we are doing the Kiss It. What was the name of it, Dave?
Kiss or not to kiss.
Kiss or not to kiss. Okay.
That's that'll be a fun one.
Unless one of our commentators this evening has a better title for that show next week. God, we should start doing contests to have people pick titles for shows.
Oh gosh, that'd be so much better than John trying to figure them out.
What? My titles are perfect.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for coming and watching tonight. We will see you next week. Have a great night.
God.
Oh man, we should add another 5 minutes so I can have a rebuttal moment. Just saying.